My name is Mary, and about a couple of years ago, I met the perfect guy. And of course, I fell in love with him right away. I was willing to do a lot for him, that at some point, I even refused my parents to be with him, and he deceived me, and very cruelly. That year, my family and I decided to celebrate American Independence Day in a big way. We invited our neighbors home and planned to sit down at our house and have dinner after an active party. My mother works as a cook, and my father runs a small veterinary clinic. Sonia, my older sister, is in college. When I started high school, she was just graduating. We are completely different, both in appearance and in spirit. I'm more restless, as my father says, just like my grandfather. But my sister is more calm, neat, clean. We even have different figures. I'm more whipped, not to say that full, let's say in shape. But Sonia's figure can only be envied. I call her a witch because she eats everything and doesn't get fat. Not like me. I have to limit my appetite. Otherwise, I will look like my grandfather as well. So, on Thanksgiving Day, my friends and I decided to walk around the city, watch the festivities. Our mayor gave us a really cool holiday, hired artists, including circus performers, performed on the main stage of the city. Later, we got hungry and went to the burger shop. I took a queue and went to the toilet. When I got to the place, I saw that there was a guy standing there. I got angry and told him that this is my place. He looked at me like I was nothing and said my name wasn't there. I was so angry that I was on the edge. Bought a burger, took my time, caught up with him and smeared it on his face, ketchup dripping down his chin. Oh, it was a big fight. Anyway, we ended up exchanging numbers and he asked me out. Yes, that's how it happens, it turns out. I didn't hesitate to ask him to meet me that evening, but what's the big deal? After all, a holiday is just a great occasion. Eugene agreed. He came to pick me up a few hours later while I was changing in my room. There were already a lot of people in the house, and I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. The door was opened by my sister, and he was confused. He did not know how to introduce himself. Sonia ran into my room and said that some guy came to see me. I put on lipstick and went downstairs. Eugene apologized for taking my sister by surprise, but I reassured him that it was a small matter and didn't need to be bothered. You have a big family, he said, and I laughed in response and reassured him, explaining that these people are not all relatives, but neighbors. Then he asked me to tell him about my family. My parents and my sister. I thought it was cute. Much attention. We had a good chat that night, and he walked me home and asked if he could meet me again, and I said I could do it tomorrow. The next day was a day off, and he came to my house with flowers. I saw 2 bouquets, and I had a question, and he said that the second one was for my sister for yesterday's awkwardness. I quickly brought the bouquet, threw it on her bed, quickly rattled that it was for her, and ran away. So we saw each other almost every day. I liked him more and more. His cologne, his eyes, his voice, I liked everything. A week later, I suggested that we go to the park to relax. Then we went for a ride on bikes and roller skates. We had a fairly active dating life. I liked it. I also liked his modesty. He, like a well-mannered guy, came to my house almost every day and brought 2 bouquets. For me and my sister, so that she would not be offended. I told her that she hasn't had a boyfriend in a long time. When Eugene and I were about to go to the golf club, my parents protested out of the blue. My mother protested that I was away too often. I told her that I was in a relationship now, and she said that sometimes it would be nice to spend some time with my family. You have Sonia for that. She's in. She doesn't leave the house at all. It may have sounded rude, but it was true. It's not my fault that I'm the only one in a relationship, even though I'm younger. A scandal broke out at home. At this hot moment, Eugene rang the doorbell. My mother opened it, and he too flew in full. He stood like a fool with flowers in his hands, and my mother scolded him like a little boy. I was so embarrassed in front of him that I started shouting at my mother. Sonia came to my mother's defense. I started yelling at her, and my father immediately jumped in and said that I was now under house arrest for a month. "If you were like your sister, there would be no problems," he said, and that was my last boiling point. I exploded. "Oh, right, so I'm worse? I knew you liked me less. Or maybe you don't like me at all. Sonia is perfect, but I'm not. If you don't need me, then I'm going to live with Eugene. You're not my family anymore," I shouted, slammed the door, grabbed the guy by the hand, and left. I don't know how long we were silent, sitting on a bench in the park, but I was shaking with anger. When it was quite dark, I said I wanted to sleep. Eugene offered to get a taxi for me, and I said, "Aren't we going to your place?" He was confused and said he thought I was joking. But how could you joke with such things? I was in shock. I was not clever and I fell into a stupor, not knowing how to understand it. "You're my boyfriend, and I thought it was okay if I stayed with you for a while. Didn't you say that you live alone? That your parents are still away?" "I can't go home," I explained, and Eugene looked at me and said timidly that he didn't think it would be like this. "I didn't ask you to give up on your parents. After all, I think you jumped to conclusions." "We haven't actually met yet," he said. I felt myself getting mad again. I yelled at him so that the whole neighborhood could hear. "But we never even kissed," he said. It seemed to me that he was just stalling for the moment, trying to make it special. I realized that we were going to have a long conversation. It turned out that I forced myself on him, as he says. Moreover, he only spent time with me because I invited him myself, and it was inconvenient for him to refuse. And in general, he liked Sonia. That's why he brought flowers for her too. That's why he didn't shrug me off to be close to her. That's why he didn't kiss me. He had feelings for someone else, and it turned out to be my own sister. And I hurried everything, as they say. I invented it myself. I believed it myself. I told him to go to hell and never show up on my doorstep again. I came home almost in the morning, all broken, in tears, and in a bad mood. No one in the house was sleeping. They were looking for me. When they saw me in this state, they asked me what had happened, and I told them in one breath and started crying again. Sonia said that the idiot was blind if he hadn't fallen in love with me. It was nice. Since then, I have not rushed things and no longer threaten to leave the house.
My name is Gwen. I recently went through the worst moment of my life. I had to choose between two people whom I loved, my mom and my boyfriend Ethan. I chose love, and he betrayed me. And all of this might not have happened if my mother hadn't given me a choice. It all started last summer vacation. My friends and I went to an amusement park to celebrate Independence Day. The holiday was very noisy and bright. We were preparing to have a good time. Festivities were held throughout the city, but a concert was organized in the heart of it. The mayor invited a popular rock band to perform some hot tracks. Naturally, their appearance on the stage caused a storm of emotions among the citizens. My friends, among others, were waiting for the band to finally sing so they could sign autographs and take selfies. They said that their Instagram followers would be jealous, and I would be sorry that I didn't take a picture too. I honestly said that I don't like the style of their music, clothes, it's just not my style. I didn't understand how guys who had longer hair on their heads than me could even like them. While my friends were bulldozing their way through the crowd for autographs, I went to get some hot dogs nearby. I don't know what's so sexy about guys with black eyeliner, but their music sure sucks, I said aloud as I waited for food. This is the kind of genre that really suits Independence Day because rock was invented in the US and the UK. And since the 1950s, music has remained popular all over the world, said a voice behind me. From fright, I turned around. It turned out to be the bass guitarist of this band. Damn, I thought, this was awkward. While I was trying to find the words to apologize, the musician took my hot dogs and said they were a gift from me as compensation. I was terribly indignant at this impudence, ran after him, and said that if our tastes different, I do not have to treat a hairy, decorated guy with food at my own expense. But he had already eaten everything by then and put the wrapper in my hands. I think I blushed with anger, slapped him, and left. He yelled at me to call him and let him buy me a proper dinner. I gave him my middle finger and walked away. Naturally, my girls saw this. On the way home, they took out all the brain, begged to go to dinner with him, and at the same time, take them with me.
We'll be sitting at the next table and he won't even notice us. Please, this is an incredible chance, they said.
From that moment, I had no peace. I would wake up and fall asleep to messages from my friends, begging and blackmailing me to meet them. I put up with it as long as I could, until one of them, Erica, said that she would tell my mother that I had lost her earrings. All right, one dinner, and that's it. And how will we meet, by the way? I don't know his phone number, I said with crazy. But my prudent friends had already done everything. They took his number that day and arranged for an evening. I must admit I was surprised to see Ethan without black eyeliner, without a guitar, in normal clothes, with a normal hairstyle. It made him look much more attractive. He picked me up in the car, and my girlfriends followed us. Ethan took me to a restaurant. I was not in the mood, and I showed it with all my appearance. Despite this, Ethan was polite and tried to start a conversation. In the end, I couldn't help but laugh because behind us, my girls were gawking at us and taking surreptitious photos. The musician didn't even ask what was wrong. He just said, "Let me finally give you an autograph and your friends will leave us alone." The girls heard his words and immediately ran to him. They screamed, arranged a whole photo session in the restaurant. For their loud behavior, the administrator made a remark to them. I've never felt more stupid. Then the girls left. Ethan asked the waiter if they had his favorite cherry cheesecake, but there was none. He was upset and then offered to take me home as he saw my discomfort. I agreed. On the way, he talked a lot about his band and music, and then asked what I liked. So imperceptibly began a dialogue. It turns out that celebrities have their own quirks, despite the popularity and wealth. Ethan just loves cherry cheesecakes, especially if they are stolen. I laughed at his jokes for a long time. It's strange, but he turned out to be an interesting conversationalist. He was fond of chemistry, read a lot of smart books. It was a revelation to me. In general, since then, he has called and written almost every day. I became attached. A couple of weeks later, Ethan invited me to another band concert. I arrived a little early and snuck into backstage to give him a cherry cheesecake. In the dressing room was all his gang except himself. They started throwing dirty jokes at me, calling me another chick, and I was confused and didn't know what to do. Ethan went into the dressing room and led me away, excusing himself. He saw the cheesecake and kissed me for the first time. So our love story began. Naturally, my mother found out about it. She was against the rock musician who, according to her, is too irresponsible, windy, not serious. She told me every day that she wouldn't let me ruin my life the way she had because of my father. Every time we were going on a date, she would go out and chase my boyfriend away. My relationship with him was on the verge of breaking up because of her. So it was decided. I was going to run out of the house with Ethan. The day before, my mother and I had a big fight about our relationship, and one day I waited until my mother was asleep, packed up, and ran to Ethan's. In my farewell note, I asked my mother not to look for us. I was scared, running through the streets at night and imagining in my head how Ethan and I were touring all over the world together, how happy we were together, how much we loved each other. I smiled and walked to the hotel. I knocked on the door of his room, but no one answered. The door was unlocked when I walked in, saw someone's shoes on the floor, and an untouched cherry cheesecake on the table. Moans came from the bedroom. At this moment, I felt my knees shaking, and tears immediately gushed from my eyes. I don't know which hurt more, that he betrayed me, or that my mother was right. By the morning I returned home, my mother was hysterical. She was about to call the police and saw me. My mother had only to look at my face. Instead of screaming and fighting, she hugged me tightly, and I sobbed. "This is what I wanted to protect you from, my daughter. I will definitely never betray you," my mother said. Since then, I have always listened to her words.